Hello, YouTube. Hello, guys and gals. Welcome to the Dave DY Show. I'm going to get right into it. Today, I saw the first review for a pretty awesome celebratory documentary. If you are unaware, this year is the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. June whatever. June 4th, June 23rd, June 24th, June 1st, whatever, 1969, right? And Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon with the Apollo 11 rocket in a monumental feat over a decade of work, starting, with John Glenn in space with the Mercury project, culminating in the Apollo project, firing individuals up, competing against Russia with Sputnik, and then ultimately building and designing a vehicle to take two individuals off this planet, launch them toward the moon with a landing vehicle attached such that they could then depart a command module, land on the moon, and then return to a command module for a return home. Incredible feat. And you have naysayers and you have flat earth people and non-moon landing individuals, and it was all staged. We won't pay attention to the critics, the individuals with their tinfoil caps, the naysayers, the negative opinionated individuals, and there always will be. It's a bell curve. You will always have people that it is their desire to state the opposite for whatever reason, and that's irrelevant. This is a celebration for all of us that understand, that agree. Director Todd Douglas Miller did this production. He was granted access through NASA and through the National Archives, through 11,000 raw hours of footage. This isn't a movie in a movie sense. This isn't a documentary in a spoken, documented sense. This is a conglomeration of thousands of hours of raw footage tied into a timeline of the events, focusing on the critical milestones. The planning and building, and then the preparation, the astronauts, the launch, and then like the return home, the 3 or 4 different key milestone stages. That's it. And this dude pulled from every key piece of public domain and privately owned, right, by NASA or whatever, that then went to the National Archives or wherever, and has sat. And as you've noticed recently, a lot of articles have come out that original footage was lost or whatnot. A lot of this stuff was shot on July or June 16th, whenever we launched. It was shot in 70 millimeter, big cameras, right? So different, and it was done in that manner because that was the best footage of the day. You could do slow motion, you could capture the breast frame rates, all that stuff, right? The highest quality photography. And they had cameras everywhere. If you haven't seen them, they had them stationed all around the actual liftoff. They had them stationed, everywhere around Cape Canaveral when they launched. They had them all over the vehicle, the Apollo 11 rocket, right? The Mercury 5 rocket, the biggest vehicle ever created in history. And I've given stats on this thing before, like 420,000 pound payload, 7 million pounds of thrust. I mean, this thing never before and never after has been created for mankind, from mankind, for our race, for our people. And it strikes me and it chills me, the awe of our people, all of our people, starting in 1960 or whenever this project really kicked off into 1969, the culmination of our human endeavor. And it gets me thinking about the trials and tribulations of today and the comparisons, right? The population at the time in 1965, let's say, of 195 million people, as opposed to 310 million now that we have. And the strife that was going on in the country at the time, segregation and oppression of the peoples of color. In the United States, with Martin Luther King Jr. coming out, and his I Have a Dream speech, and his fight for rights, and his ultimate death and sacrifice. And it often comes down to two key components, one or the other, or a combination of both. And it's lost anymore. It's lost. And it's lost because of the achievements of the people before us that have allowed us the luxury, the wealth, the benefits of today, such that the human condition allows us to no longer experience those sacrifices, that strife, that pain. As I've said many times in the past, the crucible of failure and what's done, what has to be done for monumental human success. And it happens every day all over the world now, not just in the United States, not just in Europe. It's happening in Mexico, it's happening in Guatemala, it's happening in Brazil, it's happening in South Africa, it's happening in Kenya. It's happening in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They're trying to have it happen in Cairo, in Egypt, where I just talked about our man, Bassam Youssef, who's gone. Had to flee. They would have killed him. It's happening everywhere, and we often see the individual sacrifice and the individual triumph. We share those stories of people, of Martin Luther King Jr. sacrificing his life for a cause of his own desire, his people's desire, a mission for his life. Just like Alex Honnold, who climbed Yosemite alone for a decade, for 15 years. Obscurity. No one knew the dude. Something of a monster, a rock monster, with huge hands and a sinewy, skinny body and a mind of iron, dedicated to rock. And then did something unheard of. It strikes awe and respect and beauty. Appreciation of people, man. And we've seen it in our athletes. Pele, Vision Quest. I watched a man on a TV channel in Spanish flip upside down and kick a ball backwards into a goal, while the other players on the field were stunned. He transcended human. That's why we participate, for those snippets of greatness. And they're awesome to behold, and it's humbling to see the work that has to occur. The evolution of Michael Jordan from North Carolina to a Chicago Bulls and ultimately a basketball god. In a time when there wasn't a machine like there is now, a machine that pumps out LeBron Jameses all the time, the machine has really optimized that goal. Michael Jordan was a unique Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Dr. J, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain had freakish human, benefits. Just a giant. But all of those individuals, and you look at that and you're in awe, and I celebrate that, but I also celebrate the group triumph in 1960-65 when any people of color, of race, of creed all got together. And while it wasn't tremendously diverse in the space program, if you look, there were still women, there were still many nationalities involved in that effort. And it was a triumph of humanity. 1 million people in June or July, whenever the hell the space launch was, the Apollo 11 launch was, 1 million people stood on the shores around Cape Canaveral in Florida. And they watched a rocket, a vehicle launch and put our people on another planet. Astounding, awe-inspiring. And this film comes out and it reminded me of that. It's called Apollo 11. It's a documentary. It comes out sometime in March or May, maybe May 1st or something, in the US and the UK, by this director, Todd Douglas Miller. Just the footage of the event, man. There isn't a speaker. Doesn't take a spin or a view. It's the refined or combed down or cleaned up or scrubbed top or paramount pieces of 11,000 hours of raw footage that surrounded this event. And therefore, it's true and it's real, and I can't wait to watch it. And it draws me back to some of the men and women on that program that I've seen many documentaries on, because I am interested in space. And I love Elon Musk. Elon Musk, fucking revolutionizing our space travel again. Jeff Bezos. And there's a weird beauty to it, and yet there's a weird scrutiny to it. Geeks and nerds and super intellects. And that's not true at all. There's every kind and every type of hard-working person, man, woman, any ethnicity, any race, that right now are in these programs. If you haven't watched them, if you haven't watched an Elon Musk launch from SpaceX, where they have a team out in Hawthorne that does a multimedia event and shares all the information, and it's young people and it's older people, and they have tattoos and they have piercings, and they're diverse and they're ethnic and they're smart and they're well spoken. It's awesome. It's a great celebration of humanity. It's everything that we here in the media were not attaining. And it's silly. It's bullshit. This bullshit about inequality. This bullshit about, we're not taken care of. And in many respects, we aren't. There is clear failure in a lot of the programs in this country. Education, social services. But we blame a group or a government or a company or some acronym of something that should be blamed. And when in fact, that's not fair. Because we saw this coming decades ago. It was the fundamental breakdown of a unit that cultivates and allows a child, a newborn, to turn and grow into an infant, and then a child, and then an adolescent, and then an adult. And that responsibility is gone. It's nobody's anymore. There's no accountability. There's no accountability to that infant, that baby, that child, that adolescent, that adult. That's the fundamental failure. And we reach and we blame and we point because we can't answer these questions. The government's responsible. The president's responsible. Social services is responsible. DCF. The priests, our religion's responsible. And those are all wrong. The people or persons responsible are the individual or individuals that bore that child. And it's gone. That breakdown has saturated. It's usurped any of the common sense of our society. It's permeated all aspects. And we're not answering that question. How do we fix that issue? That's the fundamental issue in this country right now. It's not DACA children from another fucking place. It's not immigrants coming in from somewhere else. Those are lies. Is that a piece of it? Sure, it's a piece of it. We are not addressing the fundamental familial structure breakdown, failure that exists in this country for a massive portion of those infants, those children, those adolescents. We're not addressing it. And in fact, it's flowing the other way. We are not only not addressing that, in a liberal manner, we continue to drift further from that conservative, constructive, very organized necessity for success over a period of years and decades. And we're superficially ingratiating and satisfying ourselves with the immediate, with how we look, how we're perceived, how everybody thinks about us, instead of the fundamental measure, which has been throughout time, your actions, what we do as humans, which is the basis of all our governance and all of our laws, our actions. Not our words, our observations, how we're perceived. And I saw this happening a decade ago, 2 decades ago. Perception started to become reality, become everything. Fundamental failure. And we are failing those infants, and we are doing nothing. We are still struggling with a Roe v. Wade, some ridiculous, arcane, religious belief of life. And when it's actually conceived, and when it ties to some soul, something that we are unlawful or unable or should never have the ability to terminate, when in fact we are no longer feeding, watering, mentoring, supporting, growing that life. So what's the bigger injustice? Killing a child, a life form, before it takes place on this planet and presence, while still being grown and shared in a womb, or allowing that new child, that new infant, to flourish in an environment of failure. They're both deplorable. And we're succeeding at neither, dramatically failing. And I am not one that says abortion should or should not be allowed. It is a focal point that we've never managed well. And it's turned away from the reality of the facts, and it's turned into a right, a woman's right, or a right of humanity, or a religious right. And we've missed the point. The point is the current situation that we're in, where there are no parents, there is no care, and we have institutions, churches, governments. Society now has to care for a lost child, a lost infant. So I was considering these things, and I wanted to celebrate the sacrifices that made us and make us great as individuals, and that make us great as a group, and to try to correlate that to some of the failures that are occurring presently and the breakdowns of our society. This society of entitlement and superficial visibility and popularity. And we really have to refocus and review the important things for our success and our growth and our health. We're missing that target right now, and it's turned into chaotic noise. A chaotic environment of noise on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, which is ridiculous. That's a failure. That's the wrong approach. So those are my views for today. I wanted to pump this and get it out there. And again, thanks for listening to the Day DUI Show. Out!